So the founder event is a few individuals found or start a new population. But with a population bottleneck, you have this population and it's pretty big, and all of a sudden some terrible catastrophe occurs and most of them die. And then again, because only a few survived, we brought in chance because it was some kind of catastrophe. So we brought in chance as a factor. And now, look, in fact, with this example, the big B allele is gone. The survivors are all little b. And in fact, that is what we call fixation, because there's no variation in the alleles. The alleles are fixed at little b. There's 100% little b. So this population that survived is obviously going to be different than the parent population. And again, they may not survive. That's where the cheetahs come in. Someone asked about pandas, and I'm not 100% sure, but I wouldn't doubt it because they've been breeding pandas to get more pandas, so they probably are related. So the cheetahs, something happened to cheetahs about 20,000 years ago, and there were very few survivors, and they're thinking they were probably relatives at that, sharing alleles already. So now the modern day cheetahs are they don't have a lot of genetic variation. They've got very little genetic variation, and that's proven to be a problem for them. And it's basically driving them to extinction, as well as, of course, then you throw habitat destruction and other things on top of that. But yeah, they're not doing too well. They will probably be extinct in a few decades. All right, so we've talked about natural selection and genetic drift, two ways that genetic drift can happen. And then there's sexual selection. And there's some controversy over this, but it looks like there are some times where sexual selection is a mechanism of evolution. But sexual selection can also occur within the umbrella of natural selection too, because it's quite common. There are two types. Intersexual selection and intrasexual selection. In fact, let me go back. Let's do the intra first. Well, it was first. I skipped. Anyway, intra, within the sex. Male-male competition for access to mates, or female-female competition for access to mates. And this is where you might see two male elk out there duking it out. Or when a new lion from outside thinks he's big and bad enough to take on that resident lion, the one that's been the one that had access to all the females, the alpha guy, take him on. So he comes in and starts a fight with him. So male-male competition is quite common compared to the female-female competition. But male-male competition, intra, within the sex. Intersexual selection, or mate choice, or non-random mating. Well, this is non-random mating, is where usually the females choose the males. Now, we may not be as familiar with that because we're both females and males are rather choosy in humans, and it makes sense because in general it takes both the female and the male to raise offspring. So as the mating system becomes more monogamous and there's more input from the male than just the sperm, you tend to see more choosiness on the side of the male. But in some birds, for example, one thing you see is a really pretty male. He's got, like this guy with this thing he can puff out there. So you see these really pretty males. And these pretty males have either some color or some behavior or something to attract females. and the females choose them. And it's not always pretty. I mean, for frogs, you know, you may think that frogs croaking out there is like the coolest thing and it's there to lull you to sleep. And it's not. It's male frogs calling female frogs, trying to attract female frogs to themselves for the purpose of mating with them. And the female frogs, in fact, so I'm switching to another example. The female frogs are listening. And here's what they're listening for. Ribbit, ribbit. Depending on the species, it might not be quite that deep. Versus, again, within the species, ribbit, ribbit. Because you see, ribbit, ribbit goes with the bigger male, and ribbit, ribbit goes with the smaller male. And the bigger male has probably lived longer. That makes him pretty darn sexy to a female frog. Because then, you know, it's not like she does a lot of thinking about this, but the fact that he lived longer, that's good for her offspring. Because remember evolution, that her offspring will be more likely to survive if they pick up his characteristics that allowed him to survive for so long. At least they have a better chance at the beginning. So she's going for the big guy. That's what all that frog calling is for, is to get the females. So, and then again, well, neither one of the frogs offer much parental help. You know, they don't take care of the offspring. But in birds, a lot of times the females are stuck taking care of the offspring. But in some birds, both take care. So like eagles. Eagles are monogamous. Eagles pair. They pair for life. You know, so they're more like us. Well, we don't always pair for life. I don't think eagles go to divorce court. I think sometimes one dies, and so they might find another eagle to pair up with. But yeah, it's this mate choice, and it's more likely by females because in general, females put in more care. They tend the offspring, while the males, in a lot of species, their only contribution to the offspring is the sperm. So, all right. I think I have one more slide to just again bring home this point that there are multiple mechanisms of evolution. We've talked about 3 of them, but one of the things that is, despite what mechanism of evolution you're looking at, that natural selection is that mechanism of evolution that leads to adaptation to the environment, to the individuals being more adapted to that environment, more fit for it. So, you know, because it's based on survival and reproduction. And survival and reproduction of their offspring. So their survival as well. All right, so tomorrow I will work on ecology. I've been behind because of all the assigning of fact sheets for assessing and for my other class posters. So, all right. I will be back tomorrow.